Good morning, my little moonbeam. I'm home. Yes, I'm finally home. I'm sorry you had to wait so long. I hope your protective mitts didn't bother you too much while you were shifted. You understand, right? They're for keeping your claws from ripping up the bed sheets. They weren't so bad. That's good to hear. Let me just get closer and remove those mitts, as well as your muzzle. Then I will leave you alone so you can get showered and dressed in private. After all, you have every right to maintain your modesty. And becoming a fearsome beast every full moon doesn't change that. There goes the first one, and the other one. Would you let me take a look at your hands? I want to see if your restraints have caused you any harm. Thank you. Your hands seem to be in all right shape. Does it feel okay when I hold them? That's good. A lot of people say I have cold hands, but they just assume it's because I'm a doctor and not because I am a vampire, since they are blissfully unaware of that fact. I hope your muzzle cage wasn't too tight. I had to estimate the length and thickness of your snout from memory. I understand the cage can be a source of frustration, especially if it's too tight. I'll unlock you now. You are certainly welcome. Sorry I couldn't be here last night. I missed you too, but the hospital needs my help so much. The rest of the staff are facing extreme burnout like I haven't seen in such a massive scale for a long time. It seems that your last shift took a lot out of you. Self-discipline is awfully hard for a lycanthrope when it comes time. But you impressively managed it. I'll let you get dressed. When you're ready, why don't you come meet me in the kitchen? Oh, there you are. I must say you're looking your human self again. Let me tell you, I had a hard shift last night. But you made my evening a good start to my night. You were being so good yesterday. Remember I told you it was going to be a full moon? I waited to see if you would ask me to put your restraints on you. I was quite proud when you approached me with all of them in hand. Oh, and I could sense your heart beating when you asked, and you gave me a face I couldn't say no to. I figure you deserve to sleep in and have an easy day to recover. In fact, what do you say? Are you ready for me to make you a nice breakfast? What's for breakfast, you ask? How does this strike your fancy? Thick-cut brioche French toast with creamy mascarpone cheese, hot spiced apple compote, candied pistachios, and sage sausage links on the side. Does that sound appetizing? Well, color me pleasantly thrilled, since I already picked up everything to make it. Yes, I would have been woefully unprepared if you told me you didn't like that idea. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Honestly, I have no idea when things are going to lighten up at work. Sure, I've been through dangerous times before, but back then it was a little easier to dust off your hands and say you tried everything. Now, the sheer range of treatments and options makes everyone in the medical field wonder. We ask ourselves if our patient might have been better off if we'd only thought of a better treatment. A lot seems to weigh on our inspiration. And if we don't bring that to the table, the organization could be at a loss. I remember once when I worked in an intensive care unit. There was a large group of people working for a furniture company and walked out one day. They could no longer abide by their fellow employees falling ill from working long hours in the painting room. That's where they applied varnish to wood. It was unventilated. They also didn't think it was okay to be required to work at a sewing machine for such a long time that they would nod off with a powerful needle running just fractions of an inch from their fingers. I could go on, but suffice to say that working in manufacturing at that time would be unrecognizable today. So when those people walked out, well, folks like me saw the fallout. There was a patient who, at the time, I thought would never recover. I'll admit I paid closer attention, not as a doctor should, but more like a vulture who has identified their prey. That's not to say I was cruel. I turned the radio on for him. It seemed to make them happy. But one night I started the radio, and there was a music box playing. The man who hasn't spoken a word in my presence suddenly called out and said, "Is that Brahms?" I watched him turn his head and swear it must be them. I turned up the volume on the radio so he could hear it better, and I saw him smile. I couldn't believe it. He lifted his hand and circled his finger like he was moving the music along. He started to say, "It has to be, yes, it has to be, there's none other." I assured him he named it correctly. I started to ask if he knew where he was. I was astonished to learn he remembered much of what happened around him. He was still there for weeks, and every night after that, he asked if I could call the radio station to request that song again. Sometimes they would, but most of the time they said it wasn't very popular, and the management wouldn't be happy with them. The man seemed so happy, though. So one night I thought I would ask the radio station and see if I could inquire about the recording. See if I could have a copy of the record sent to the hospital. They told me they didn't have a record, but offered to let me buy the music box. See, they'd gotten it from a pawn shop thinking that they'd make their money back hand over fist. I bargained with them in my usual way and came back to the ICU. I brought the music box to the man and played it for him. I saw his eyes open as he reached for the sound. He grasped the music box, and when he brought it into his view, he opened his mouth so wide that I imagined he was going to try to eat it. He told me, "Thank you, Dr. Harper. You don't know what this means to me." Naturally, I told him that he could hear the song every night if he wanted to. But he was right. I didn't know. You see, when he wasn't cutting wood and coating himself in sawdust for the company, he liked to make music boxes for his daughter. He was also aware that she would occasionally sell one just to get by. But when the song played on the radio, he recognized it. That's what he meant when he said that has to be, there's no other. He was so elated he offered to make me one with a song of my choice. After some urging on his part, I relented and asked for Beethoven. And according to him, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting something Beethoven, and asked me to try again. I told him I really don't know. He sighed, and he told me something I'll never forget. This is what I was afraid of. Your generation doesn't have inspiration. It was good to know I still passed as a young man. You must think I walked out of that factory that day on the chance that I might encounter more money. Well, that's not entirely untrue. There's something I hated about that place more than the terrible sewing machines and the sparky wiring. The factory grew out of the hopes and dreams of the community. And when it started to fulfill our wishes, we invested even more of ourselves. It gave us pride that we created something that elevated all of us. Next thing you know, we're building houses designed by one architect fresh out of college. It was quite a start for them. Made the family proud as the first one in their line to earn a degree. But his one house design became everyone's house. If you lived in one, you knew how everyone else lived. But it didn't stop there either. We filled those houses with the furniture from the factory. Heck, why wouldn't we? We had to stand by our work, right? It went on like that. Before you know it, hopes and dreams became the name of the cancer that held us down, held the town down. We were modestly wealthy in all things except inspiration. We didn't just manufacture furniture for a nation, but also the backdrop of entire lives for our future generations. Or at least that's how he said it. So he went about doing something he never tried before, and made something special. He said that he studied the theory of making these things, only a little bit, and if his knowledge was limited or flawed, it would show in the result and make it stand out, make it a bit more human. Is that what it's like to love something for its flaws instead of in spite of them? To this day, I don't understand. I think that music box helped him recover. And he later found another passion. He became a conservationist and started speaking at schools about the importance of being good stewards of our natural resources. Eventually, he and a few others recruited teenagers and younger people who needed or wanted direction, and formed the Ranger Association. I realize you are not a fan of those people, but for what it's worth, the founders would have found a way to live with you. I hope it helps knowing greater people like him would have respected your right to exist. Oh, I think your breakfast is ready. Here you are. I hope you like it. Not to make you feel uncomfortable, but there's something else I'd like you to try. Do you recall the other vampire I was telling you about? The blonde man who stumbled on his power of mind over matter? Yes, you are correct. The manipulator type. I'd like to see if he can perform his charm on you. And, well, there's no easy way to say this. I'd like you to try keeping control of yourself and practice this while you are shifted. And I think you can get more practice if this vampire persuades you and your body to believe the full moon is out. It might not work. But if it does, we could see if you can build up a tolerance to the urges you experience when you're shifted. I honestly think it's your best option. Well, yes, I considered that as well. If it were possible for him to use his power of manipulation to convince you and your body that the moon is not full, I would go that route. We could explore that possibility later. You have to understand, we're unable to run formal tests by modern convention. But I promise you, look at me. I promise you that if you really give this an honest effort, I'll arrange for you to meet the person you attacked. I have it on good authority. He would like someone to talk to. He'd like someone that would understand. Maybe he'll even forgive you. So how does that strike your fancy? I'll give you some time to think about it, but you may have to make a choice soon. Now I'm afraid daylight is coming, so I should retire for the morning. You take care now.